All right, so back to the book collector. So at this point of our book collector, we were able to make an array of objects, and these objects contain the values we pass through the author, book title, and the number of pages input form. So I just wanted to go over this a little bit. I'm going to make sure this is by default being hidden. So I think it's right here at display. So we're gonna say none. So now by default, that shouldn't be showing. Hold on. Why is it? What's going on? Add book modal. So none. Add book modal form. None. Okay, it's been giving me weird issues and I have no idea why. So we'll just try to close this out and then reopen this with here. Okay. Well, this is interesting. I guess we get to do a little bit of research here on why this isn't working. So working with the pop-up form items, this is the modal that pops up when welcome home is clicked. Okay, but why is it shown by default? Maybe there's something in my app.js that I did. No, open modal block, open modal pop-up. So when we click here, okay, hold on. So is modal pop-up clicked? So when we click around the modal, it shouldn't close. When we click outside, it closes. That's working correctly. Is modal pop-up clicked? So no. So is modal btn clicked? This is the modal btn. So if it's clicked, it's the modal btn. This is modal btn. If it's clicked, we open modal, and then if it's not clicked, so pop-up display none, modal pop-up, that's what it's connected to. Let's find it here. It's not going to be that high up. So form buttons, form, we have the read input, green, red buttons. It should be around here somewhere. That's the form. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be here, but when we refresh, it starts off by showing us it. So that is really weird. Oh, it's this right here. Okay, there we go. So basically we added some functionality here. So of course, once we click on the welcome home, we get our pop-up. But what we're gonna do is with the author, book title, and the number of pages, we're gonna store all of these values in an array of objects. And the way we did this was, first of all, well, let's start all the way from the beginning. We added a new add event listener, and this is the modal pop-up. Okay, that's weird. I just got a knock. No, this was the handle modal click event. That's the modal pop-up. Then this is the document body. So the body, this is the modal pop-up. That's not what we were looking for. It's here. So this dot form add event listener, and we gave the form an add event listener of submit. So this button can now be submit. One of the things that happens here is when we click that submit button, it actually will refresh the entire page, and we do not want that to happen. So what we did here was we set event prevent default. So when we take that off and we click the submit button, let's just put some test code in here or writing, you see that it just refreshes the page. So to avoid that, we put prevent default, and that makes sure that our page doesn't refresh. So now we have three values here. So it's the author, the book title, and the number of pages. And these are corresponding with the form right here and these inputs. So if you see, these inputs they all have IDs. So if we open this modal, the ID of number of pages corresponds with the number of pages, book title corresponds with the input of book title, and the author ID corresponds with the input of author. Another thing to notice is that all these three are required. So what we did is that we grabbed those three IDs and we stored them inside of our constructor function. And we did that by saying grab the author, grab the book title, and grab the number of pages, right? So now that we grab all of these, we have access to all of these inputs. So what we basically did down here is we said this author, so this author, and then take the value from the author and store it in a variable called author. Same with the book title. So this book title would be the book title input, and then we got the value, and then the number of pages, we got the input from number of pages, and we got the value. So we said next, so has book. So if we have all these three, then has book is true. So the only way has book can be true is if we give an author, book title, and number of pages. If we don't provide all three of these, then has book will be false, and this if statement will run falsy. So this if statement is basically saying if has book is equal to true, then we're going to say this and then add book. So this add book is calling a function, and this function is, since this function is being called, this is the argument, and the argument is going to be an object literal syntax. So it's creating an object with these three values, and these are just object shorthand. So this would just basically be like saying this right here. And I'll leave it like this just for reference, just so I don't get confused in the future. So this is just object shorthand, author works the same if we just say author. So since this is being called, we can infer that this function is being created down here, and it is. So this function is being created over here. And as you see, it has a parameter of book. So since the argument is being called, when the argument of the function is being called, and it's adding key value pairs of author, book title, and number of pages, when we go down here, we can see that the function is going to take the new book, so a new book that we're creating, and it's going to say the author is going to be the book.author, and that corresponds up here with the author, and that corresponds up here with the author value that we put inside of the input. So when we go down here, we get the book title, which corresponds with the book title, it being called up here, which corresponds with the value of book title that we're putting inside of the input, and then the same for the number of pages. So this parameter is basically going to be the object that's going to be passed through this object, and it's going to fill in the values of author, book title, number of pages. And we also have color. So one thing is that when we create these divs, they're going to be able to change their colors, and we haven't gotten to that part, so I won't explain it, but that's kind of the plan with the colors. We're going to change the div of the color, and I think it'll be whether or not you finish reading the book or not, is whether or not the color will be red or green. I'm not entirely sure yet because I haven't gotten there. So the ID is basically going to say this book's length. So what we noticed here is that we're creating now an array. So this array is created up here, and we're creating an array called this.books. And this is going to be an empty array because all of our book elements that are going to be passed through this input are going to be placed inside of this array. And the reason why we do this is because now we have access to a lot of different array methods that we wouldn't have, and it just makes it more flexible and makes the data easier to work with. So we're basically saying here, we are going to get the this.books array, and we're going to get the length of that array. And if there's no books inside of the array, so if it's greater than 0 or if it's less than 0, we're going to run this falsy statement here. So it's just going to say 1. So if the array length is 0 and we put an author, let's say test, since the array length right now is less than 0, this is going to get the ID of 1, right? So if we go and check over here, we get the ID of 1. So this line of code though not very easy to understand for me. All this basically means is that the array is going to be going from 0 index to counting from 1 onwards. So since the default length of the array is 0, that first item we add into it will start at 1 instead of 0. So if it's, so like let's say our ID is 1 now, so 1 is greater than 0. So if that's true, we're going to run this truthy ternary, and we're going to say this dot books. So we're going to take our array, and then we're going to go inside of the array. So inside of the books, this dot books, and then we're going to get the length of the elements inside of the array, and we're going to subtract it by 1. And then we're going to add dot ID. We're going to append that. I'm not entirely sure why we append that. Haven't really been able to like figure that out in my mind yet. So bit of a distraction. So, and then we're going to say +1. So I think the +1 is basically saying this next ID is going to be 2 instead of 1. So 2 instead of 1. So if we go down here, now this array is going to be an ID of 2 instead of the ID of 1. And I think this is just making sure that our array counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's that new book object, and the object is going to get its values from the book, which is going to get its value from this argument here of these author, book title, and number pages, which is going to get its value from the inputs that we grabbed through the DOM. So after that, we're going to take the this.books array and we're going to equal it to the this.books array. So we're basically taking the books array that's empty, and then we're spreading it to make sure all of the elements are inputted into one array. And then after we duplicate and spread it, so because we're using the same name here, it basically means we're mutating the original, and then we're going to clone the original, take all of the elements from the original, and we're going to add the new book. So every new book object is going to be put to the end of it. So if we remember in the past, basically this second argument inside of the array literal syntax with the spreaded operator, the second argument is going to be the new book, or is going to be a new element. So every new book is going to be a new element inside of this mutated and spreaded array. And then we basically showed that by using the console.log and the this.books array. So lots of distractions there, but I just wanted to basically show my code and kind of my thought process behind it. And I'm going to keep on building forward on this. And I want to eventually do a to-do list with the same thing, because I feel like I can really do it. Like, it doesn't seem very hard now that I kind of know how to use a class constructor. So that's pretty much it for that video, but I'll see you in the next.